This is the second part of a two-part video on the White Stripes, so if you haven't seen the first one yet, you should go watch that now and meet me back here in about 10 minutes. I'm going to jump back in where we left off, but at this point it's worth noting an interesting part of the band's public image. They claim to be brother and sister. Though this is something that they had put on since their early days, it became more important as they gained fame. The purpose of this tale was to keep the public's focus solely on the music. Though a little strange, it may have been a good idea to muddy the waters around their personal life, especially as the two divorced before releasing White Blood Cells. Now at the end of the last video, the Stripes had just put out White Blood Cells on Sympathy for the Record Industry. In September, popular indie label XL Recordings released the record throughout Europe. The band was quickly growing in popularity and entered the new year on a successful international tour. 2002 was the year the White Stripes blew up. In the beginning of the year, major label V2 Records re-released White Blood Cells. This was the extra push that really aided the already growing interest in the band. Everyone was talking about the White Stripes, and everyone was loving the record. For this album, the band tried to distance their sound a bit from its blues roots, leaning more toward the garage rock sounds. Believe it or not, there isn't a single guitar solo on White Blood Cells, and for the first time, there were no covers present either. On April 23rd, the album's second single, Fell in Love with a Girl, was released. The new sound and energy of White Blood Cells is represented perfectly by its hit music video, which was created with stop motion using Legos. Jack asked Lego if they could team up and include Lego versions of Jack and Meg with every copy of the single. The Lego people denied, until the video started gaining traction. When they changed their mind though, so had Jack, and the deal never amounted to anything. There are a few specific shows toward the end of 2002 that I think really demonstrate how much bigger the White Stripes had suddenly become. In August, the band teamed up with another group on top of the world at the time, and another favorite of mine, The Strokes, to play 2 shows each in their respective home cities. Here's a clip of Jack soloing over the Strokes song New York City Cops at Radio City Music Hall. That's one of those crazy events I wish I could have been present for, but something that may further prove their entrance into the mainstream was a slot opening for the Rolling Stones that October. Somewhere in the midst of all this, the band found 2 weeks to record their next record at London's Toe Rag Studios. On March 7th, 2003, they released their first single from this album, a little-known track called Seven Nation Army. Very underground. No one's ever heard of it. On April Fool's Day, Elephant was released to the world. People like this one too. The album earned the band 2 Grammys, Rolling Stone magazine gave Elephant a perfect score, and it cracked the top 10 on the US albums chart, landing at number 6 on the Billboard 200. Another amazing album, with Meg's playing more solid and powerful than ever, and Jack reintroducing some amazing lead guitar work on bluesy tracks like Ball and Biscuit, to face-ripping rock tunes like Black Math. In December, the album's third single, Hardest Button to Button, was released. Along with it came my favorite White Stripes music video, something that's much better to just show you than to try and describe. In February of 2005, the White Stripes went back into Jack's living room, Third Man Studios, to record their next album. This time they pushed the boundaries of their 2-piece configuration, bringing in new sounds from a wide variety of instruments never before used by the band. These ranged from marimba to mandolin and even a bass guitar. About a week before the album's release, the first single, Blue Orchid, dropped. with an attention-grabbing, octave-affected guitar riff that told the listener right away something new was coming. On June 7, 2005, Get Behind Me Satan was released, once again to critical acclaim. This album entered the Billboard 200 at number 3 and would later win the band another Grammy. The new direction this album took is highlighted by the next 2 singles and probably my favorite cuts from the record, My Doorbell and The Denial Twist.
If you think that a kiss is on the lips, come on, you got it all wrong, man. And if you think that our dance was all in the hips, oh well, then do the twist. If you think holding hands is all in the fingers, grab hold of the soul where the memory lingers, and make sure to never do it with the singers, 'cause it's tell everyone in the world.
In November, the band released a cover of the Tegan and Sara song Walking with a Ghost, which was then released on the EP of the same name in December, along with 4 live tracks. And somehow, somewhere in the midst of all of this, Jack found time to record another entire album with the band you may have heard of called The Raconteurs. No wonder the Stripes had to postpone part of that year's world tour due to strained vocal cords. 2006 was a relatively quiet year for the White Stripes, at least for the half of the band named Meg. Jack was off with his new band, touring the world on the back of a great record and one particular track that happens to be one of my favorite songs of all time. But that's a story for next time. The White Stripes played less than 10 shows in 2006, and as the new year arrived, it was announced that V2 Records could no longer release White Stripes music due to the label's reconstruction. Only a month later, though, news came out that the band had signed a single album deal with Warner Bros. Recorded in February 2007 in Nashville, Tennessee, the band's 6th and final album, Icky Thump, was released on June 15, 2007, exactly 8 years after their first album. This record goes back to the band's roots with some very bluesy tracks, while also adding in some new influences. Let me rephrase that. This is a rock album that contains both bagpipes and a trumpet. The title track contains one of the best riffs in the career of a band with multiple iconic riffs, and the album only gets more interesting from there. Plus, the existence of Icky Thump also gave the world this gem. Unsurprisingly, Icky Thump was another commercial and critical success. Surprisingly, the only thing keeping it out of the number 1 spot on the Billboard 200 was Bon Jovi. Icky Thump the album and Icky Thump the song each won a Grammy, and the track became the first and only White Stripes song to crack the top 40 on the Billboard charts, making its way up to number 26. For the first time in their career, the band embarked on a Canadian tour, visiting every province and playing multiple secret shows along the way, including their famous one-note show. I strongly recommend watching the amazing documentary of the tour, Under Great White Northern Lights. It shows the Stripes performing at the top of their game and gives a great behind-the-scenes look at the band's time touring Canada. Once the Canadian tour concluded, the band began the US leg of the Icky Thump tour. After the first string of dates was finished, it was announced that the remainder of the tour was cancelled due to problems Meg was having with anxiety. Jack had just been touring the world with the Raconteurs, so continuing out on the road was no big deal for him. But Meg had had a quiet year away from the spotlight before jumping right into a full-on world tour. This was too much for her to handle and marked the beginning of the end for the White Stripes, though it wouldn't become official for a while. On February 20th, 2009, the band played a single song on the last episode of Late Night with Conan O'Brien. This would turn out to be their final performance.
I wasn't sure this could happen. I am personally very thrilled that we could make this happen this evening. Please welcome our good friends for many years, the White Stripes.
Fall is here the year, back to school, ring the bell, round the shoes, walking blues, counterfeit.
2 years later, in February of 2011, the band officially announced their breakup. And while the fact that this amazing band no longer exists as it did could be seen as a sad fact, I think it's probably a good thing that the band finished strong. A career filled with amazing music that never had the chance to collapse in on itself. In that way, the band will always stay fresh and sweet, just like a peppermint.
The birds we found safely walked to school without a sound.